Do you get the joke? Red, white, and blue. I'm the white because it's like the name of the movie. It's the colors, and I'm the middle. If you don't get the joke, you're not gonna like this YouTube channel. I will never forget the moment I received a text saying my dad was coming to pick me up from school to go to the local police station for questioning. I was a junior in high school, and it was 1:55 p.m. This was back in the days of flip phones, so there was no reason to whip out the old LG NV2 or whatever unless anyone I might be interested in talking to was doing the same, and that was pretty rare during the school day. So I don't know why I felt the compulsion to check my phone a few minutes before the bell rang, but we had finished our Spanish 4 assignment in the computer lab a little early and everyone was packed up to go, so I pulled it from my bag and there was that message. Now, there are any number of reasonable reactions one could have to something like that, and mine was, seriously? Because strange as it was, I understood why, and I was very irritated that a false accusation levied against me in school a couple weeks before that I was so sure had been resolved I never even bothered mentioning it to my mom was apparently now a big fucking deal, and I was so not there for it. But oh well. I went in for questioning, blah blah blah, came out the other side even angrier about the whole thing. Later, I talked to a friend who had also been questioned, and he let me know that the detectives hadn't appreciated my attitude, which made sense because I hadn't the faintest bit of respect for them or the bullshit they were engaged in, and I didn't hide it. I think about this fairly often. I mean, it is probably the most objectively interesting thing that's ever happened to me, but it also speaks to two fundamental truths. One, I don't really like cops. And two, I don't need to be concerned for my own safety if I make that known, even on their turf. This assumed safety has always been a complicating factor when I, a very white dude, think about police and policing more broadly, and I imagine that's true for a lot of progressive white folks. When I see an officer, I do not worry about my own safety, and in general assume that if something were to happen to me in their line of sight, they would probably do something about it, and isn't that nice? But also, they're bad, and I know they're bad, and every single time I see a cop, I have the genuine urge to shout, "Fuck cops!" I haven't done it yet, but it's always there. And I don't know, maybe when I make merch, I'll do a branded shirt that says ACAB so that they know that I know that they're bad, but I don't have to draw unneeded attention to myself, except insofar as I am promoting the hashtag brand, hashtag hustle life, hashtag get the bag, though. Anyways, I've mentioned some of this on the channel before, but because it is an entertainment show where I talk about politics and not a political show where I talk about entertainment, I generally save my more specific policy preferences for my live streams. But this time, I can't really talk around it. Hello, by the way, and welcome to the Week in Review. You can call me more out of my depth than usual. And today, I am returning to my discussion of Steve McQueen's Small Axe series of films to talk about its third entry, Red, White, and Blue. Going in, the only thing I knew about Red, White, and Blue was that John Boyega plays a police officer, and that made me very curious, because I had gotten a fairly good impression of McQueen's feelings on those folks from Mangrove, a movie that just radiates ACAB energy. I praised Mangrove specifically for not trying to humanize the abusive constable Pulley and his thugs, not trying to both sides the issue to the detriment of those whose stories actually mattered. And I wondered if maybe this film was going to complicate that perspective a little bit and give some measure of humanity to the state-sanctioned criminal organizations. Nope. Not even a little bit. Like, if Mangrove, a film about the first time UK courts ever acknowledged how racism played a part in policing, has ACAB energy, Red, White, and Blue has that shit coursing through its veins. Red, White, and Blue introduces the police almost immediately. A young black boy in full school uniform is waiting outside for someone to come pick him up when two fully grown adults in their own uniforms walk on over and frisk this 7-year-old. It's weird and gross, and I hated it. The next time we see cops, they hospitalize an older man for disagreeing with them when they try to fine him for illegally parking his truck. The young boy is Leroy Logan, and that older man is his father, Kenneth. These events take place years apart, and in the interim, Leroy has grown up and gotten a PhD and is happily married with a baby on the way, but he's also over scientific research. He wants to do something more meaningful. He wants to be a cop so that he can be the change he wants to see in the world. It's a nice sentiment, I guess, but all of us know that one person can't fix racism, despite what 2019 Academy Award Best Picture winner Green Book might tell you. And one person definitely wasn't able to fix racism in the British police system in the 1980s, and since Leroy Logan was, in fact, a real person whose autobiography, Closing Ranks: My Life as a Cop, was released just a few months ago, I don't think you'll be surprised to learn he doesn't succeed. Red, White, and Blue is not based on that autobiography, but it does get the broad strokes of Logan's life correct, the change in careers, what that did to his relationships, the overwhelming racism he faced from his fellow officers. Logan apparently found it cathartic to see himself on screen, so clearly he thinks it's a fair portrayal. And that's pretty gosh darn bleak. Though the film's implication that he has been broken by the system turns out not to have been the case, as he remained with the force until 2013. Logan wanted to effectively be what in America is too cutely called COPS, in all caps, or community-oriented policing services, which is to say a system where police officers proactively work to build ties with their assigned areas and become a part of the community, as opposed to showing up acting like big tough bosses or soldiers in a war zone. Logan had experience with the complete disregard constables had for his community, and he wanted to be the bridge between them, allowing them to see police as something other than a bunch of racists, and allowing the bunch of racists to see the community as something other than a jungle. It doesn't work. The first time I ever heard that 10% of people are always good, 10% are always bad, the rest will go either way, it was in relation to police, and that's now how I tend to think about it. Logan is one of those first 10%. He is a genuinely good person who wants to help, checking up on the community and trying to keep people safe. And when he sees injustices, he stands up against them, even if his initial instinct is sometimes not to cause a scene. But him pushing back doesn't actually do anything, because the spineless 80% always followed the 10% who are bad. It is so much easier to be bad because you just don't have to do anything at all. Don't speak up when you see something wrong. Don't even second when someone else does the speaking up for you. And definitely don't respond to the sole black officer around the corner who needs backup while chasing down a perp, ultimately resulting in him being struck hard with a lead pipe because no one came to help him. It's easy and incredibly frustrating to watch, but that's why it's important that the movie exists, and exists like this. Your typical dramatic narrative would show Logan going through adversity only to find some sort of victory in the end that we can all feel good about. Even if it's small, it's something. Mangrove is like that, really. But Red, White, and Blue is not. There is no victory until the whole thing burns to the ground. And that may well be the only way to go. No doubt the role of law enforcement in our society should be dramatically reduced. Regardless of their efficacy in stopping crime, there is no reason for them to be involved in day-to-day mundanity, and the money that funds them should go to other organizations and workers with expertise in handling most of the situations that are currently placed onto the default response team. And so defunding and abolishing, as people on the left present those ideas, sound great. And I have argued in favor of both in conversations because I'm that kind of person. But at the same time, I am also open to other solutions, say abolishing police unions instead and changing the position of officer to one that is better paid but less secure, therefore appealing to an entirely different contingent of people who would actually be accountable for their actions. I've been thinking a lot about that idea since I first heard it, however long ago. It seems to make sense, right? It's a lot less utopian, though would likely be much more popular at the polls. Frankly, I'm not knowledgeable enough to make a coherent counter-argument. And I've been wondering whether red, white, and blue does, since Britain doesn't actually have police unions in the same way that America does, and yet clearly has many of the same issues. But while they don't have unions per se, there is the Federation, which is a similarly responsible organization for minimizing oversight. And you see the consequences of that in this film. Its only real subplot involves Kenneth's desire to have his day in court and look the men who beat him for no reason in the eye on the stand. And that goes on until suddenly it doesn't. They decide to settle because they know they don't have a case. All harm, no foul. And that made me realize that it's not an argument enough on its own, but becomes one when you've brought Mangrove into the picture. I talked last time about the importance of sequencing in the anthology and what it means to have films where they are in the lineup. And I think that Mangrove and Red, White, and Blue fill in some of each other's gaps. Red, White, and Blue is effectively about the immunity that police have within their own precinct, whereas Mangrove is about the justice system that has decided that they deserve exceptional status. Making it easy to fire cops when they abuse their power is great, but we need attorneys who will prosecute them, and juries who will convict them too. And yes, in Mangrove, the public decides that actually these men and women didn't do anything wrong, but that is very different from the liars and abusers being charged, let alone convicted. 2020 has, among so many other things, been a stark reminder of just how rare justice actually is. And on the subject of small acts as a whole, I think Red, White, and Blue is the first film in the series that feels like it needs to be part of an anthology. Mangrove is clearly a standalone project, one that could have been released in theaters and no one would have questioned it. It is made richer by what followed, obviously, but it doesn't require any of it. I've already argued that Lover's Rock is best appreciated in context with Mangrove, but it is very easy to appreciate on its own merits and could likewise have seen its own release. But because of how bleakly Red, White, and Blue leaves us, I think audiences would see the film as a slap in the face if it were presented on its own. The general response would likely have been a resounding, "What the fuck was that?" And at least some of the anger that people should be directing at our institutions would be directed at McQueen instead. And even further, I actually think the end here is less angry and more despairing. And I don't believe that's what McQueen wants to leave us with. And in fact, I know that it isn't. We're only at the series midpoint. And I'm excited to see how he continues to expand upon these ideas as we continue to explore this place in this time. 8.4 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you particularly to my patrons, my mom, Hamry and Marco, Kat Saracata, Benjamin Schiff, Anthony Cole, Elliot Fowler, Magnolia Denton, Greg Lucina, Werner van Elfen, Liam Knipe, Kojo, and Phil Bates. If you like this video, that's great. If not, I don't care. If you want to see more, please subscribe. I hope to see you in the next one.